Thank you for being here this evening. The other day, I was at my house, and I was sitting at my kitchen table, and I was watching, I think, a football game. I think it was the Cleveland Browns were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it was on the TV, and I was kind of paying attention to that. And out of the corner of my eye, I see my youngest son telling my oldest son to smell his glass of water. It smells funny. Just thought it was strange. And then all of a sudden I see the glass of water fly up into his face and I shoot everywhere. And then I just get this puzzled look on my face. And I was, what? Why? What? And then I thought about it. And I think I have that puzzled look and say those things quite often. I walked in today when I was checking someone that had their teeth cleaned, and I walked in and I saw the news was on, and I don't watch the news, but the news was on. And I walked in and it was some story, I don't remember what it was, and I just looked at it and I said, what? Why? And I just shook my head. And it reminded me of a story. So I would like to share a short story with you. There was a wise man who lived in the middle of a small town. This wise man was familiar with everyone in the town and friends with most of the people in the town. One day, a young man approached him and said, I have something to tell you about your friend. You need to hear this. And the wise man put up his hand, almost like a Jedi, and instantly, the young man became silent. And the wise man stood there in silence. And it was the kind of silence between two people that begins to get awkward after a while. You're one, can I talk now? Can I not? Am I supposed to? I'm not. And the young man could hardly bear it another second. And just before he began to speak, the wise man asked him a question. And the wise man said, do you know what the fastest 6-letter word is? The young man thought for a second and replied, Google. It's a good guess. Made the wise man chuckle, but he said, no. The fastest 6-letter word is gossip. He mimicked a whisper and he said, I'm only going to tell you this because you're my friend. And he said, and then boom, it's off. And he said, if you really want to spread it faster, you say, hey, I'm only going to tell you this because you're my friend. Don't tell anyone else. And then whammo, it's like it's on the internet immediately. Wise man said the catalyst is just tell people don't tell anybody if you want everybody to know it. The young man nodded his head, but still looked confused because he wanted to really tell this wise man about the wise man's friend. He had this information. And the wise man asked, why do we make opinions based on another just on what someone tells you? Too many times we make judgments about others based on what we hear without ever checking the information. We simply let it pass through all 3 gates and take it as gospel. And the young man looked puzzled. 3 gates, he thought. Well, he's just thought, well, the old man's just gone crazy. But I've really got to tell him this about his friend. And so he said, can you just stop for a second so I can tell you about your friend? It's important. And the wise man says, yes, sure. You can tell me exactly what you need to tell me. So the young man started to speak again, only to be silenced by the Jedi hand of the wise man again. He said, you can tell me, but only if it passes through the 3 gates. I don't listen to anything. I don't bring anything into my heart, into my mind, unless it passes through the 3 gates. So the young man, just at this point, a bit exasperated, said, so what are the 3 gates? And the wise man said, well, I'm glad you asked. The first gate is it true? The young man just had that blank stare. He said, "What you're about to tell me about my friend, is it true?" And the young man said, "I think so." To which the wise man responded, "Is it true? Have you verified it?" And the young man said, "Well, I don't actually know. I haven't really verified it. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure." And the wise man said, "Well, then I don't want to hear it." And he said, "But just in case, just so you know, I'll go ahead and tell you what gate number 2 is." And he says, the wise man asks, "What you're going to tell me about my friend, is it beneficial?" And the young man looked down just a little bit and shook his head. He said, "I guess not. Probably not beneficial." And the wise man said, "Then I really don't want to hear it." And he said, "But just so you know, I'll tell you what the third gate is. What you're going to tell me about my friend, is it kind?" At that point, the young man just looked down at his shoes and walked off. In the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8, it tells us, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." If this is true, which we know it is, we should be very careful about what we let into our minds and into our hearts. Because if it's not one of those things, it's not beneficial for us. In Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 29, it says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good, to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearer." If this is true, which we know it is, we should be very careful about what information we let out of our mouth, out of our heart, out of our minds. So before we speak, before we listen, let it pass through the 3 gates. Is it true? Is it beneficial? And is it kind? And if we censor what we bring in and what we put out by running it through those 3 gates, then you're going to spend a whole lot less time going, "What? Why would you say that?" And a whole lot more time going, "It was nice not talking to you," which is what we need to say sometimes. Now, I do want to tell you one thing that I know that is true, that is beneficial, and it is kind. And the truth of the matter is, God loves each and every one of us. God has a plan for each and every one of us. There is nothing more true on the planet than that. God has provided a way for each one of us through our belief in Him, through putting Him on in baptism and living a faithful life, that I can have a home in heaven. And there is nothing more beneficial than that. And the ability to save someone else's soul from the fiery pit of hell, there is nothing more kind than that. So as we go throughout the rest of this week, I hope that you look at those 3 gates, and I hope it tempers what we say and what we hear, but I hope it also reminds us of the importance and the wonderful beauty of God's love and the blessings that He gives each one of us. If we can help you, please come forward as we stand and sing the song of invitation.